Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Huck. Today I'm talking about 5 books that I specifically want to read as audiobooks. So I really like listening to audiobooks. I have been listening to more and more audiobooks over the last 2 years, but a lot of times the way that I choose which audiobooks to listen to, or like which books are going to be audiobooks versus physical reads, is kind of determined by my level of interest in the book. So if it's a book that I'm like kind of interested in, but I don't really think I'm gonna like love it, but I'm like interested enough that I kind of want to try it, then I'll do an audiobook, which means that a lot of the audiobooks that I listen to, I end up feeling very mediocre about because they're the books that I was kind of expecting to be mediocre, and sometimes I'm surprised and sometimes I find some really great audiobooks. But I recently was thinking about there are a few books that I specifically want to read them as audiobooks because I genuinely think that I'll enjoy them more as audiobooks. Not because I think they're going to be mediocre, but because I think I'm really going to like them, but for one reason or another, I think that I would enjoy them more as audiobooks. So the first book that I want to talk about is City of Stairs, which is the first book in a high fantasy trilogy by Robert Jackson Bennett. I really want to read more from Robert Jackson Bennett because I read Foundry Side from him last year and I really liked it. But the reason that I want to listen to this as an audiobook is because I enjoyed Foundry Side as an audiobook so much more than a physical book, because I started reading Foundry Side as a physical book and I just didn't get along with his writing style, but when I listened to the audiobook, it just was so much easier, and then the plot and the world were so incredible that I really enjoyed the book. But I really want to read more books from him, and so I think that audiobooks are going to be the way to go because I'm really interested in the way that he constructs worlds, plots, magic systems, all of that, but I just don't think that his writing style is for me. The next book on this list is Rosemary Andrew by Seanan McGuire. This is the first book in her October Daye series, which I think is an urban fantasy that involves fae. And this series, so this is another one where I have read books from this author before, Seanan McGuire. I've read her Wayward Children series and I read Middle Game and I loved Middle Game so much. It was one of my favorite books of 2019 and I really want to read more from Seanan McGuire because I feel like she has the potential to be a favorite author, but I want to read more books from her. But it seems like a lot of her other books are urban fantasy kind of, and that's not really my favorite genre, so I think that I'll enjoy it more as an audiobook. In December, there was a different urban fantasy series that I listened to one of the books as an audiobook, and I just enjoyed it a lot more in audiobook format, so I feel like maybe urban fantasy is a series that just works better for me as an audiobook. So that's why I really want to listen to this one as an audiobook, because I do think that I could really like this series because I really like Seanan McGuire's books, but I think that an audiobook is just going to work better for this for me. I feel like I just am saying the word audiobook so many times. The next book that I want to listen to is Elantras by Brandon Sanderson. So this is another one kind of similar maybe to City of Stairs, where the reason I want to listen to it as an audiobook is because I don't really get on with the writing style of Brandon Sanderson. But I kind of want to give him another try. So the only book that I've read by Brandon Sanderson is it The Final Empire? The first book in the Mistborn trilogy. I didn't like it. I didn't like his writing very much. I didn't really like the characters or the plot in it. So those are some issues. But I still want to give him another try. I feel like I could potentially like his books because I just hear so many good things about him. And I also recently saw an interview with him. It just made me like him more as a person and want to read his books more. So I wanted to read something that is not in the Mistborn trilogy because I did not like the first book in that trilogy. And I've heard mixed things about Elantras, but from some people that I tend to agree with their feelings about books, I've heard really good things about Elantras, and it's a standalone. It's not one of his it's not one of his longest books, I think. And I really just want to give him another try and see if I like his worlds and his stories more as audiobooks because maybe his writing style isn't just the thing that doesn't work for me. Next, I want to listen to An Unkindness of Magicians by Kat Howard as an audiobook. So this is one that I have heard some mixed things about, but it seems like the people who love it really love it and seem to describe it as a book that you can't really describe. And I'm very much intrigued by books that are described as indescribable. But one of the reasons that I think I would like it more as an audiobook is partially the setting, because it's set in New York City, which is just a setting that I'm like not as into. But again, it might just be easier for me to enjoy the story and not kind of feel bogged down by the setting. And I feel like I could really love this book, but I just feel like it has a couple of elements that might bog me down, and listening to it could help like prevent that from happening. And the last one on this list is actually not a specific book, it's an author, and I'm gonna try to figure out which book to start with, which is Neil Gaiman. So Neil Gaiman is of course a really well-known author, and I've heard so many amazing things about his books, and I've never quite known where to start with his books. So if you have any recommendations about which book to start with by Neil Gaiman, I'd love to hear them. But also, a lot of times when people talk about his books, I've heard people saying that the audiobooks are phenomenal, and that especially the audiobooks that Neil Gaiman narrates himself, I've just heard people say that like audiobooks are the way to go with his books, especially if it is narrated by Neil Gaiman. So I really want to try a Neil Gaiman book, but I specifically want to listen to an audiobook that he narrates himself. So those are my top 5 books that I want to listen to specifically as audiobooks. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, bye!